the list. When I think back to my teenage years, there's one memory that still crawls under my skin. I try not to dwell on it too long because every time I do, it feels like something cold is watching me from behind. I was 13 when my parents sent me off to a private boarding school on the outskirts of town. The campus looked peaceful, clean hallways, tall oak trees, and dorms lined like perfect rows of safety. But I would soon realize that there was nothing safe about that place. My roommate's name was Weston. At first, he seemed normal, quiet, pale kid who always wore the same gray hoodie no matter the weather. We didn't talk much, just lived side by side in that tiny room with 2 beds, 2 desks, and one flickering overhead light that hummed whenever the air conditioner kicked on. About a week after moving in, Weston did something strange. He walked up to me without saying a word, handed me a folded piece of paper, and said, "These are the things you can't bring into our room." I thought it was a joke, but he didn't laugh. His face stayed perfectly still, eyes wide and serious. When I unfolded the paper, I saw a list, written neatly in blue ink, of random items. No frogs. No mirrors. No salt. That last one caught me off guard. Salt? Why would anyone ban salt? We weren't even allowed to have food in the dorms. I asked him why, and he just shrugged. "It's better that way," he said. That night, I lay awake listening to Weston whisper to himself. It wasn't mumbling, it was like he was talking to someone. The words were too low to understand, but sometimes I heard my name between the hissing syllables. After a few nights of this, curiosity got the best of me. One afternoon while Weston was in class, I lifted his mattress and found a small black notebook. Inside were names, dozens of them, written in the same handwriting as the list. Half of the names were crossed out, and on the last page was mine. Not scratched out. Just sitting there, waiting. I slammed the notebook shut and shoved it back. My hands were shaking. I tried to convince myself it was a prank or maybe a weird diary thing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. From that moment on, Weston felt different. His stares lasted too long. His whispers grew louder at night. And every time I caught him looking at me, he had this faint, crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. One night, I woke up to a soft sound, not whispering this time. Breathing. Slow, steady, inches from my face. When I opened my eyes, Weston was standing over my bed, motionless, smiling down at me. His hands were raised slightly, like he'd frozen mid-gesture. For a moment, I couldn't scream. My throat locked up. Then the panic hit, and I jolted upright, yelling his name. He didn't even flinch. He just whispered, "You were talking in your sleep." Then he turned and went back to his bed, still smiling, still awake. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the night after either. A few days later, I came back to the dorm and found a snake, small, green, and alive, coiled up right on my pillow. Weston sat at his desk, calmly watching me freak out. When I demanded to know what was going on, he said, "It's just a prank. They're everywhere." Then he opened a glass jar beside him, and the snake slithered into it on its own. Like it recognized him. That's when I started staying in my friends' rooms more often. Anywhere but there. But even then, I could feel the unease following me. Weston's whispers crept into my dreams. I'd wake up convinced I heard someone standing by my bed. Then one night, everything crossed the line between reality and nightmare. I woke up frozen, couldn't move, couldn't scream. Above me, a dark shape was swirling near the ceiling, pulsing like smoke with a heartbeat. A hand, or something like one, stretched out of it, clawing at my bed frame. When it reached for me, it jerked back, as if burned by invisible fire. Then it exploded into motion, thrashing around the room, knocking over books and lamps, before smashing straight through the window. The sound of breaking glass snapped me awake, for real this time. The cold air hit my face. The window was actually shattered, and the claw marks were still carved into the wood beside my bed. I turned toward Weston's bed. He was asleep or pretending to be. But no matter how hard I shook him, he wouldn't wake up. His lips were moving though, whispering. The same whisper I'd been hearing since the first night. That was when I finally realized. Whatever Weston was talking to all those nights was still in the room with us. The things he kept. The morning after the shattered window, sunlight poured into the room like it was trying to erase what had happened. But the damage was still there. Broken glass crunched under my shoes, the cold air creeping through the open frame. I didn't say a word to Weston at first. He sat at his desk, calm as ever, flipping through that same black notebook like nothing was wrong. When I finally asked him about the window, he looked genuinely confused. What window? He said it like he was hearing about it for the first time. Like he couldn't see the jagged hole behind me, or the glass glittering across the floor. I wanted to believe he was lying, but the blank look on his face wasn't an act. It was something worse. It was empty. Later that day, the RA showed up. I told him the truth. That something broke in, or maybe Weston did it. But when Weston spoke, his voice was calm, measured, almost rehearsed. He had a nightmare. He gets them a lot. The RA nodded, as if that explained everything, and told me to keep things respectful. No investigation, no replacement window. Just a pat on the shoulder and a look that said boys will be boys. That night, I slept with my blanket wrapped tight, my eyes fixed on Weston's bed. He didn't whisper. He didn't move. He just lay there perfectly still. But I could feel the air between us, charged, humming, like static before a lightning strike. Around midnight, I heard a faint rattling sound. It came from Weston's desk. I got up slowly, every floorboard creaking under my bare feet, and saw that his jar, the one the snake had crawled into, was moving. The lid was off, but the jar still rocked back and forth like something inside was breathing. And beside it there were more jars. 6 of them. Each one held something different. A frog, a spider, what looked like a small bird feather, and one jar that looked empty but had white salt residue clinging to the glass. The moment I noticed the salt, I remembered the first thing on his list. No salt. Before I could step back, Weston's voice broke the silence. You shouldn't be looking at that. I froze. He wasn't in bed anymore. He was standing behind me, half in the dark, his eyes wide open. It's not safe for you, he said. They don't like being seen. I asked him who didn't like being seen, but he just smiled faintly, the same way he had that night at my bedside. You wouldn't believe me. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop staring at the jars. One of them began to fog from the inside, like someone was breathing into it. Another rattled softly, and the spider twitched like it was reacting to something invisible. That was it for me. I grabbed my blanket and bolted, sleeping on the couch in the lounge downstairs. When I came back the next morning, every jar on Weston's desk was gone, except one. The empty one. Weeks passed. I tried to convince myself that what happened was just some weird dream brought on by stress or teenage paranoia. But the fear never left. Every time I saw Weston walking alone across campus, the other students seemed to part around him, giving him space without even realizing it. Like something inside them knew. Then, one night in early winter, I woke to the faint sound of whispering again. It wasn't Weston's voice this time, it was several voices, whispering all at once, coming from beneath his bed. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw him kneeling on the floor, his head bowed. He was muttering words in a language I didn't recognize, his hands trembling as he drew something across the floorboards, a circle made of salt. When he noticed I was awake, he didn't even try to hide it. Stay inside your bed, he whispered. Don't move. Don't say a word. I couldn't breathe. The whispers grew louder, echoing from under the circle. The air turned heavy, thick, like it was filled with smoke that I couldn't see. And then, something pushed against the floor from underneath. The wood bent upward. Once, twice. Like something clawing to get out. Weston shouted something. It wasn't English, and the sound cut off instantly. The room went silent again, except for both of us breathing hard. He looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. "Now they know about you too." I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, Weston didn't show up for class. He didn't show up for breakfast either. When I got back to our dorm, his side of the room was completely empty. Every jar, every book, even his blanket, gone. The only thing left was a folded piece of paper lying on my pillow. It was the same kind of paper he'd given me the first week. But this time, there was only one line written on it. "Do not go near the woods." That's when I finally understood. The strange noises, the whispering, the salt, the list, all of it was a warning. And by the time I realized that, it was already too late. The woods behind the school. After Weston vanished, the dorm felt heavier, like the air itself carried his absence. The school never said anything about it. No emails. No meetings. It was as if Weston had never existed. His name disappeared from class rosters, his locker emptied, and even the teachers acted like I was crazy for asking about him. But I couldn't forget. Not after what I saw. Not after the list. Not after the last note that said, "Do not go near the woods." The problem was, our dorm was right next to the woods. Every night, when the wind picked up, the trees would creak and groan like something alive was moving between them. And I swear, sometimes, I could hear the whispering again. It started small. A voice outside my window, soft and low, saying my name. Then footsteps. Slow, wet footsteps circling the dorm. The night after Weston disappeared, I dreamed of him. He was standing at the edge of the forest, pale as moonlight, his hoodie torn, his mouth moving like he was trying to say something. But his voice wasn't his own. It was layered, like a dozen voices speaking at once. When I woke up, there was dirt on my sheets. Actual dirt. That's when I decided I needed answers. The next evening, after lights out, I grabbed a flashlight and snuck outside. The wind was sharp and cold, and the woods behind the dorm looked like a wall of black teeth. I hesitated only once, when I remembered Weston's warning. Then I stepped forward anyway. At first, the forest was silent except for the crunch of leaves under my shoes. But the deeper I went, the quieter it got. No insects, no birds. Just this empty, swallowing silence. Then I saw it. A small clearing, maybe 20 feet across. In the middle was a circle made of salt, identical to the one I'd seen Weston draw that night on the floor. Inside the circle were jars. Dozens of them. Some cracked, some shattered. And every single one was empty. I moved closer. The dirt inside the circle was scorched black, as if someone had tried to burn something but failed. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died completely. That's when I heard it, that whispering sound again. Not around me this time. Below me. The ground beneath the circle was vibrating, the dirt pulsing like a heartbeat. Then I heard his voice. "You shouldn't have come." I spun around, and there he was, Weston, standing at the edge of the clearing. He looked older somehow, drained, his skin almost gray. His eyes weren't right. They reflected the moonlight like an animal's. "You broke the seal," he said quietly. "They'll see you now." I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could speak, the earth inside the salt circle caved in. A black mist erupted upward, twisting and writhing like it was alive. Faces, distorted, screaming faces, flashed in the fog before fading. The whispering became shriek. Weston stepped forward, pulling something from his sleeve. That same small notebook I'd found under his mattress months ago. He flipped it open and started muttering in that strange language again. The mist recoiled, the air thick with static and the smell of burnt metal. For a second it worked. The noise died down. The mist hesitated. Then a hand, long, bony, gray, reached out from the smoke and grabbed Weston's arm. He screamed, but he didn't run. He looked back at me, eyes wide and desperate. "Go. Please. Don't let them find you too." I didn't want to leave him, but I ran. I ran until the trees blurred into darkness, until the dorm lights appeared through the branches like stars through fog. When I looked back one last time, the clearing was empty. The mist was gone. So was Weston. The school called my parents the next morning. They said I'd been found unconscious near the dorm entrance, covered in mud and cut. They said I'd had a breakdown. No one believed what I told them. The broken circle, the mist, the whispering, it all sounded too insane. But a week later, something happened that proved I hadn't imagined any of it. The groundskeepers found a massive hole behind the dorm. Perfectly round. Charred around the edges. They said it looked like something had burned its way out. The school sealed it off with a chain-link fence. No one talked about it again. I was moved to another dorm for the rest of the semester. My new roommate was normal. Quiet. Kind. But sometimes at night I still hear that faint whisper through the vent. Sometimes the jar on my new roommate's desk rattles, just once, like something inside it remembers me. And every time it does, I remember Weston's last words. "They'll see you now."